Hello everybody, Andrew Casey at Hypersanity Books for Kids. Today I'm doing a shout out to my spouse, Janelle. I have to say she's suffered through a lot of different things when it comes to the word ambiguous. There are certain points in communication and a lot of storytelling that is effective when we use this word. And what does it mean? Well, ambiguous can come into a lot of forms of open interpretation. Certain words are said where, is it this or is it that? Is it multiple interpretations? We also hear of open-ended stories. In today's video, I will touch on some different sentence structures and examples within some dialogue and other interpretations, and I'll touch on some other key points within this video to some points that you may have not thought of before. But for now, we'll just get into it. Number 1, statements. One for the children. You have a protagonist or a hero that receives a message, and the message states, we're going to go back to where it all began. Signed, Nemesis. So there are different interpretations there. So the character can say, well, where did it all begin? And who's Nemesis? Whereas the person means your nemesis. The hero may not understand what that word means. So sometimes a character can be flawed to not understand some circumstances and be unsure where did what begin. It may mean something to one character and be oblivious to someone else. Where are the specifics to where it all began? One for the adults. A workplace puts up a statement. We are currently changing our workplace policies and procedures. Well, that's open to interpretation. Is this going to be good or bad? Is the workplace closing down and people are going to start jumping ship? So there are different interpretations with statements. Some questions can have a multiple question to the main question. Another example, did the character choose to leave the scene out of fear or motivation? There are two completely different scenarios to that one question. And sometimes a question come into another form of adding or something else, or more information, or a completely unrelated subject. That's one I'm guilty of. So sometimes a character can be in a situation where a sentence structure can be quite frustrating because it's leaving it open to more interpretation, but also more overthinking on a subject matter. Number 3, tritagonist. I love tritagonist in stories. They are wildcards. They have a lot of points within the narrative to move the story along. There are different movies and books where this is effective. And one example with tritagonists is they usually have mystery to be ambiguous on what their motives are. So we're not necessarily talking dialogue between characters talking. They can have a different motive that is hidden to unfold in certain subplots. So there are a lot of examples out there of how tritagonists can have some mystery to help add the story and the narrative to move along, but not necessarily in a good way. There can be two characters solving a problem with a third person along, and the third person is manipulated by the antagonist to do something to cause a conflict in different subplots. So think about the tritagonist within your stories, and I will touch on that subject matter in more detail, but that is another story. Number 4, open-ended. There are different stories that are open-ended. Another example with a haunted house. There's a light that flickers and a shadow within the window. Is the character alive? Is the character dead? Is there something else where the house was haunted all along? Or is it a figment of people's imagination? Is there a certain subplot within the story that is overlooked to create theories within the story? Or are characters reading into the story too much? Sometimes something being open-ended can lead to two possible scenarios. Another example is two characters beginning to date for the first time. Will they be together in the next story? Will they not be together in the next story? Sometimes leaving things open-ended leads to other episodes or chapters or even other stories yet to come. Leaving things open-ended and ambiguous still creates a mystery. And sometimes some stories are not supposed to have an answer to what the ending actually is. Number 5, Steven Spielberg and Casper. Now, I want to say clearly, I am an adult and I didn't really grow up with Casper except for the 1995 movie, and a lot of the interpretations I find are too childish and kind of insulting to a lot of people's intelligence. However, within the film, I also came up with a lot of theories, and theories are a good way to explore possibilities of open interpretation. And with the way the story goes, I'll start off with talking about Casper. He is the protagonist, followed by Kat as the deuteragonist, the supporting character. And within the story, it is ambiguous to how Casper died, but the other sad tragedy is, how did his father die? Because he was taken away to a mental institution. So there is some other dark subject matter within the story, even though a lot of the story is written for the younger audience to enjoy.
I begged and begged my dad to get me this sled. And he acted like I couldn't even have it. Morning, I came down for breakfast and there it was, just for me. Went sledding all day. My dad said that's enough, but I couldn't stop. I was having so much fun. Got late. Got dark. Got cold. And I got sick. My dad got sad. I remember I didn't go where I was supposed to go. I just stayed behind so my dad wouldn't be lonely.
Is that your dad?
Mm-hmm.
McFadden claimed that he was haunted by the ghost of his dead son, and that he invented a machine to bring him back to life.
The Lazarus.
Number 6. Dr. James Harvey.
The living impaired are known for haunting us. My question is, what's haunting them? It's a lack of resolution.
You go with me this one last time? If I don't find what I'm looking for, then it's over. No more moving, no more ghost mining.
So on the subject of being ambiguous, he is also the protagonist of the story. He is written for the adult audience. So you have the subject matter for the younger audience to follow the story and touch into some tough territory, but then you have the father being the protagonist. The ghostly trio, and I've had this argument before, they are tritagonists, and they will always be together as three. That is how they are designed to work in together. But with Dr. James Harvey, he has a lot of ambiguous qualities as a tritagonist, where he has the passing of his wife. Is she alive? Is she a ghost? He has his driven to madness obsession to try to find the answer. He also has a lot of other flaws where his daughter says you need to get out and meet friends and start living your life. So there is a certain mystery where a therapist really needs some sort of therapy or another outside view to help him through. So even though there are certain qualities of the character to be a good character, he has a lot of character flaws. And as a tritagonist with that type of situation of being open to interpretation, there is a lot of things you can work on within the story. And on the subject of theories, if you ever did watch the movie, Dr. James Harvey has consumed too much alcohol and he falls into a gutter and he dies. Now, when the Lazarus machine brings him back to life, it's turning a ghost back into a human, which means his dead body is somewhere else. So that's one of the theories that I have. I have a lot of theories around the actual movie itself, because you look at the Kerrigan character being a character without redeemable qualities.
The sudden death of her only father has left a great gaping void in her bank, in her life.
Daughter Kerrigan, Whipstaff Manor in Maine.
I just spent the last 2 days holding his clammy hand, waiting for him to kick, and all I get in return is one lousy piece of property.
There is some mystery there, because she inherited the house off Casper's father, being her father.
You keep that ghoul Crittenden off our backs, and I'd say we got a deal. It's your house. You're haunting it. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
So she may have been Casper's younger sister, spoiled. Now, there are lots of different mysteries within the story where it's open to interpretation because it didn't close the book on certain subject matters. And that's something to think about. And unfortunately, I felt like it deserved a sequel and it didn't get it. And as I have said before, I am not a Casper fan, but talking about keeping things open-ended, there are a lot of different theories that come into place on how things work. The ghostly trio in a deleted scene were confirmed to be Casper's biological family. I also think that there's some darker theories that come into question. If the father created the Lazarus machine and had enough to bring and guarantee to bring someone back to life, how did he experiment before he was taken to the mental hospital? Did he experiment on his 3 brothers?
You know and I know that you really shouldn't be here, so I'll tell you what. Why don't you go ahead and finish your meal and you can meet in my office and start the process of crossing over. What do you say?
Because that was the thing. There was the 4th brother being Casper's father. Again, open to interpretation. So sometimes you could see something and just play on some thoughts and some ideas. However, we'll move on. Number 7, moving forward. One thing I found with my wife, I say, we just want to move forward with what we're working on. Now she gets confused because she's like, well, you were talking about this subject matter and we were talking about the business, we're talking about our family, we're talking about our jobs where we're making things work, transitioning with building up Hypersanity Books and the other channels that we're working on and everything else. So not being specific, she gets confused. So sometimes a thought within my mind is a coping mechanism when getting distracted or certain interruptions where you tell yourself or you think, got to move forward. So the open interpretation when trying to talk to someone else can be confusing. So sometimes that can work in for different character flaws. When someone's reading another character's mind, there can be some mystery. There are certain science fiction stories when reading someone's mind or ways that they think to not have their mind read. So sometimes you could work on some different interesting stories to be open-ended or open to interpretation. Work on your subplots, different ways where your characters can add more mystery to the overall outcome. Number 8, final thoughts. I love the word ambiguous. I believe that with the interpretation of how stories can work, it goes. You could have multiple questions in an open-ended situation, multiple third parties with what they have to deal with leading into another sequel, or, as I mentioned with Casper, lots of theories to overthink about, and sometimes something you can inspire from can help with your writing journey. Otherwise, that's it for today. Hit like, subscribe, comment. Your comments are much appreciated, and I am open to a lot of different comments and interpretation. I do not mind on a lot of the comments that I'm seeing within the book channels. There is a lot of context that's helping to improve this channel all the time, and I do appreciate the engagement within this community. I thank you all for your support, and I will touch on another subject matter next week, aporia, which works well for debates, but that is another story.